years of struggle. In 1964, the Civil Rights Bill came into being after the Birmingham movement, which did a great deal to subpoena the conscience of a large segment of the nation to appear before the judgment seat of morality on the whole question of civil rights. After the Selma movement in 1965, we were able to get a voting rights bill. Now, all of these things represented strides, but we must see that the struggle today is much more difficult. It's more difficult today because we are struggling now for genuine equality. And it's much easier to integrate a lunch counter than it is to guarantee a livable income and a good, solid job. It's much easier to guarantee the right to vote than it is to guarantee the right to live in sanitary, decent housing conditions. It is much easier to integrate a public park than it is to make genuine, quality, integrated education a reality. And so today we are struggling for something which says we demand genuine equality. It's not merely a struggle against extremist behavior toward Negroes. And I'm convinced that many of the very people who supported us in the struggle in the South are not willing to go all the way now. I came to see this in a very difficult and painful way in Chicago over the last year where I've lived and worked. Some of the people who came quickly to march with us in Selma and Birmingham were active around Chicago. And I came to see that so many people who supported morally and even financially what we were doing in Birmingham and Selma were really outraged against the extremist behavior of Bull Connor and Jim Clark toward Negroes rather than believing in genuine equality for Negroes. And I think this is what we've got to see now, and this is what makes the struggle much more difficult. And so as a result of all of this, we see many problems existing today that are growing more difficult. It's something that is often overlooked, but Negroes generally live in worse slums today than 20 or 25 years ago. In the North, schools are more segregated today than they were in 1954 when the Supreme Court's decision on desegregation was rendered. Economically, the Negro is worse off today than he was 15 and 20 years ago. And so the unemployment rate among whites at one time was about the same as the unemployment rate among Negroes. But today the unemployment rate among Negroes is twice that of whites. And the average income of the Negro is today 50% less than whites. And as we look at these problems, we see them growing and developing every day. And we see the fact that the Negro economically is facing a depression in his everyday life that is more staggering than the depression of the 30s. The unemployment rate of the nation as a whole is about 4%. Statistics would say from the Labor Department that among Negroes it's about 8.4%. But these are the persons who are in the labor market, who still go to employment agencies to seek jobs, and so they can be calculated. The statistics can be gotten because they are still somehow in the labor market. But there are hundreds of thousands of Negroes who have given up. They've lost hope. They've come to feel that life is a long and desolate corridor for them with no exit sign. and so they no longer go to look for a job. There are those who would estimate that these persons who are called the discouraged persons would be 6 or 7% in the Negro community.
Hello, Detroit and the world. Welcome to a special Martin Luther King Day episode of Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from the Audio Wave Network studios here on Detroit's Lower East Side, powered by the East Side Community Network and sponsored by none other than the Ford Foundation. I'm Orlando Bailey.
And I'm Donna Givens.
Thank you for...
We just heard Martin Luther King in a 1967 speech at Stanford University talking about the other America.
The other America. It's I got to say, it's something about Doc's voice that it gets me every single time. He is, if not the most favorite figure in modern history, at least for me personally. I don't know about you, Donna. I don't know how you feel. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I remember we were at, Donna and I were able to take a trip to D.C. Last fall, and we went to the King Monument. And you and I sort of had this really amazing conversation about angels that were sent to us that we didn't know were angels.
Right.
And if we could record, and we have, the time that Dr. King was with us, the man was human, but he had angel qualities that has just been unsurpassed. I haven't seen anybody like him.
Right. Angelic and prophetic.
Yeah.
And the prophecy as we listen to that speech.
Yeah.
Much of that still rings true, unfortunately, today.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
I took you off script. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
you're
just
fine.
so excited about this.
It is. It's an exciting time.
Right.
It's MLK Day. Happy MLK Day, everyone. Thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform for authentic voices for real people on the east side of Detroit. We want you to like and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you listen to us on. We will be dropping a new episode every week, as I've been saying reluctantly. And we have a special guest in the house today. We have Christine MacDonald from the Detroit News. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
We are so excited to have you with us. The last episode, we kind of talked about some of the news that you broke in the articles and reports that you are continuing to write. And so we are excited to unpack a lot of what you wrote later on in the show. So thank you for being with us.
I'm excited that people are reading and discussing this. So that's all I wanted.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so it's MLK Day. And Donna, it's a 3-day weekend. What have you been doing with your long weekend?
Writing. Yes.
What are you working on?
I'm working on a novel.
Sleeve?
I'm working on a novel.
Say swear.
Yes. It's interesting because we talk about Martin Luther King and Martin Luther King's focus on this beloved nation and beloved community.
Yeah.
And actually, within my novel, I am talking about two people, a man and his wife, who are trying to create a beloved community in their own way. And it's rooted in Detroit, and it ends up expanding beyond Detroit. But it's an opportunity for me to put things I've experienced, learned, observed, and thought about into the minds and voices of other people, and to see where it all goes.
So what kind of strings do you draw on to just have and imagine? I imagine that the imagination of someone writing a novel has to just be crazy. Where are you going? What kind of place are you going to write these characters in this story?
I don't want to talk about the characters right now, but I do want to say this. I never thought I had the kind of imagination that I'd be able to write about anything interesting other than current events or history. Like documenting problems is something I'm really good at, getting at the heartstrings, that kind of thing. But what I found is it's so interesting when you create these characters, and I have this idea before I get down on my computer where they're going to go, and then I start typing, and I find out, oh no, we're going to do something else because this is what makes sense next. And so I've read that from other novelists, and I kind of thought it sounded ridiculous, but I find myself in this phase of just trying to figure out where people are. You know, you draw on people that you know, and sometimes a composite of people that you know, to create something that hopefully is interesting to other people.
Yeah. So we're in a room full of writers. Christine, do you ever write nonfiction or fiction?
No,
I'm sorry.
I stick with nonfiction. I just, I would be intimidated by that. I don't know if I can open myself up. That's really impressive. You know, I wish I could do that. Like trusting your gut in terms of what you have an idea of where these characters are going, and it sounds like if you're open to them going down different paths once you get that on paper, and trusting that is pretty interesting to me. On having one idea of how something's going to end up, and then switching gears.
I would like to pose this question. I feel like when you write either fiction or nonfiction, at least for myself, and we put it out there, it's an extension of who you are that you are offering to an audience or to the world to be able to digest it, to unpack it, critique it, and criticize it. How do you guys walk with that when you write and when you publish, and dealing with what the world may have to say about something that you birthed? It's an extension of who you are, right, so to speak.
It's always hard, I'm going to be honest, to get those critiques. It's difficult because you want to be fair as a nonfiction, as a writer. I want to make sure that everyone that I spoke with and feels like I fairly represented what they told me, and that I fairly represented the data, and or whatever topic. So it's very, for the example, just the months of build up to this story, it's very stressful because I want to make sure this story, speaking of, is about property taxes and how folks were overassessed in the city. But so part of that is making sure nobody that I've spoken to is surprised by what's going to be in the paper, and have ample opportunity to talk to me about their view on how things are presented, and I hear them out, city, mayor's office, residents, variety, and just try to do my best in terms of collecting all that and putting it out for everyone to kind of make their own conclusion, if that makes sense. But yeah, it is very hard to put yourself out there and work for months on something and feel like someone feels like you misrepresented something or didn't spend enough time on it. But you're human, so you've got to be kind to yourself. I think that's really important, and do your best. That my job is to present this to folks and to have people look at this information and not be in the dark on it. Right?
Yeah. Right. So, I've been writing for years, grant proposals. I sometimes, write opinion pieces. And when you do that, you're sort of hidden behind the facts. It's not necessarily my voice, or it is my voice, but I'm talking about something that is, right? Mm-hmm. And so that used to be a little scarier than it is for now. Now I've been doing it for so long. The scariest thing I've done lately is actually this podcast, because it is literally my voice. Right?
There's no hiding.
Right? Yeah. There's no hiding. This is me, y'all. If you don't like me, you're just not going to, because this is really who I am and how I am. You can edit what you write. You can go back. I didn't really see it that way. Let me change this time.
We don't edit this podcast.
And we record, and Orlando releases it, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I just said that. And if you make a mistake,
I know.
There's nothing you can do about the mistakes you make.
Right.
But writing the novel, for how many years people have said, when are you going to write your book? When are you going to write your book? I love your writing. When are you going to write your book? And it's always like, oh, in the future, in the future, in the future. So it's been a long buildup. And I finally got the courage to step out of my comfort zone and do something different. And it was kind of good, because we deal with very difficult facts in all of our work, right? Mm-hmm. You're, as an investigative journalist, you are investigating things that are kind of troubling and can be very sad. Yeah. And likewise, in our community, as we seek to uplift the community, you're struck with inequity and injustice and all of these things. And so for me, I'm not going to say it's an escape, but it's a way of really adding some framing to all of these issues and really thinking about a world that could be if we just did things a little bit differently. Yeah. So I encourage you to one day step out. It took me a while to really try my voice in something new. And Orlando, you're a journalist, and so
only by degree. I'm not credentialed.
There's no test. There's no test.
But I'm just saying that you have, obviously, he is on many radio shows, and he hosts. What is it?
The Millennium Moment with Mildred.
Well, the Millennium
Moment. An
Urban Consulate, where you speak to people, and so one day you may get to the point where you want to cultivate something. I really encourage people to talk about things because. So that's what I did with my weekend. Cool. What about you and yours?
I spent the weekend being a Romeo. Spent some time with my significant other and braved the scary weather and tried to go to the movies, but then the movies was closed, so we had to reconvene and spent some quality time building that relationship. All too often in our work, I feel like sometimes our lives can easily come in second place because we're so passionate about what we do. We love what we do. It doesn't seem like work. That you don't want people to feel second all the time to your occupation and to your other obligations. And so I was Romeo this weekend. It was cool. It was a lot of fun.
Okay, so welcome to 2020. Orlando's got a girlfriend, and I'm engaged.
Oh, wow.
Congratulations on your engagement.
Oh, that's great. Nice.
What about you?
This weekend, yes, we prepare. The snow was a big event. But hearing you talk, I'm going to switch gears. But just that divide, I feel that a lot at home. My husband does something that's not in any relation to newspapers writing or of government or anything. So we really mesh well because we have those separate. But I do feel like maybe I'm not talking about what I'm working on constantly. He knows once the story runs because I'm telling him it's over and we can relax for a little bit. But so I question, am I not sharing enough, with my family and about my job and what I'm doing? Because sometimes I just
sometimes I feel like my family doesn't care. Yeah. Because I'm always out doing stuff, and they're just like, "What do you do?" We don't care. Like, you know what I mean?
Right. Well, I feel like if I start talking about it, it's going to be a long. I'm going to unburden myself. So I almost feel like I just talk with my work family, fellow reporters, and then I don't share that as much at home. And I'm questioning whether I should should I be sharing more? But yeah, so that's part of, I really have a divided life, job, home, and don't really mix the two. And you kind of wonder if sometimes it's too severe and I should let my kids know more about what I'm doing and my husband. So we'll see.
A good friend of mine told me last year, and it was really poignant at the time. He said, balance. He was like, it's cool to try to achieve balance in the kind of work that we do. But he said, I actually believe balance is overrated. He said, what I am striving for in my life is harmony. How do all of these things come together and strike a beautiful chord? And, for me, it's still a work in progress.
Well, it's interesting because my fiance is an artist. Oh, okay. And so I'm sure that part of being with him helped unleash my creativity, right? Yeah. Because we talk about my job, we talk about his, we talk about our values and things, and try to find the intersection between our worlds. Yeah. And that's really, really hard. And I don't think there's any hard and fast rule for how you do it. Mm-hmm. Certainly you don't want to go home and create this story in your home that now everybody has to live your experiences, because especially when you have kids. I know when I had kids, it's all about them. When you go home, I'm mommy. I'm, mommy does not talk about work.
Right.
That's
the basics, yeah.
Yeah, so it because listen, your kids have their own problems, and they should not be forced to live your experiences. Yep. So I think that there's value in you maintaining the sanctity of your home, and not letting it bleed through because it's very different in a relationship when your kids are no longer living with you and or before you have kids. You have the opportunity to explore, and then one day your kids will be grown, and then you're going to have to find another path and find yourself again, and that might be a place where you are experimenting and trying new things like, oh, I want to write a novel.
Right. Maybe that's the time.
Oh, man. I'm feeling real Oprah-y right now. We're having these moments. I don't know what it is. It was something about Dr. King's voice.
Right.
Introspection.
It was, you just begin to just get deep all of a sudden. We're just deep right off the bat. It's time for Fresh Off the Press News Press. I can talk. It's time for Fresh Off the Press news that we are thinking about. This is our commentary on news items relevant to the city of Detroit. If you have news stories that you want us to cover, you can send them to authenticallydetroit@gmail.com or hit us up on our socials at authenticallydetroit. Donna, Fresh Off the Press.
Well, it's not a story I want people to read. It's just a story I just need to talk about. Last week in the Detroit News, there was a guest columnist, Matthew Feeney. Is he a guest columnist or?
Yeah, he's not on staff.
He's not on staff.
Yeah, no.
Right.
Yep.
Who wrote a story about be skeptical about the census, where from the Cato Institute, I guess it's kind of a libertarian thing, there's this skepticism about being counted. And, you know,
he's the director of the Cato Institute.
The director of the Cato Institute. And I think that, again, this is a libertarian type of outfit. And so he's encouraging people, don't be counted in the census. And here we are at ECN, all through the city of Detroit, trying to make sure people do get counted. Because being counted is how you make sure that there are investments in your community. That's how they decide how much money you're going to get from the federal government. That's how they decide your political representation. And actually the schools, there's so many things that are included in the census. And so Orlando and I have been working with our staff and others on this pushback. And the thing that kind of springs to mind is that when the U.S. Constitution was formed, I'm going to talk about this on King Day, when Black people were counted, we were counted as 2/3 a person.
That's right.
And if we don't make sure that we are counted, everybody in our community will still be 2/3.
That's right.
And it's not going to be because of the law, but because we have forfeited our voice, forfeited our existence and recognition. So we're running a campaign to stand up and be recognized. And I just want to point out all of the falsehoods in this document. Right. The census cannot be used to harm you or track you, and the information is anonymous. And certainly if somebody is trying to track you down, right. If you have a cell phone, you can be tracked, okay? If you have a job, you can be tracked. If you have a Facebook page, you can be
trackable.
Tracked, okay? So creating this paranoia, the state of paranoia among people who already don't trust government, I believe is dangerous and underhanded. And the kind of people who will be influenced by this are not the people who always show up for the census, always vote.
I think it's particularly misguided to write such an opinion piece in the city of Detroit, recognizing the data is showing us that Detroit would be one of the hardest municipalities to count in the 2020 census, particularly among Black males. And we know that Black males and government and systems haven't always gotten along or see eye to eye. And there is a deserving mistrust in our government. But I think to write something like this in this city, this very Black city, is dangerous. And I can't for the life of me figure out how this even got through.
But you know, the only thing that I'm comforted by is that the people that this might harm are the least likely people in Detroit to read the opinion page of the Detroit News. Take that as you want, okay? Had this appeared in some other publication or news source. So we just have to work extra hard to make sure that the kind of
we
periodicals
find
these
comfort
people
in the strangest places, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks for specifying the opinion paper.
Oh no, absolutely,
Yeah.
because you had an article and everybody read it that I know, and everybody's talking about it. So we're going to get to you.
Okay.
People know where the truth
We're going
is.
to get to you, Christine.
Okay, I'm ready.
Fresh off the press, the city of Detroit admits business tied to sinkhole operated without a permit. This story is being brought to us by clickondetroit.com, Local 4. And the Local 4 Defenders has spent some time investigating this soil contaminant that leaked into the Detroit River, and found out that the business that was operating is called Detroit Bulk Storage and Revere Copper, absolutely had no permit to be doing business at that site. And so just how angering is it, and how long will we just say as municipal government and city officials that, oh, well, this happened, this kicking the can down the road kind of mentality that I thought also existed in your story too, Christine. It's upsetting to me. The Detroit River is Detroit's main source of drinking water, right? And we have a business operating under the guise of the city of Detroit with no permit. Contaminating the water. It is maddening, and I just don't. And we help the other thing is we help small businesses try to get online and try to move into brick and mortar, and the hoops that they make these young new entrepreneurs go through, this laborious process to make sure all of their ducks are in a row, and they're not riverfront, okay? They're on the corridor far from the river, and to allow to have a business on the riverfront without a permit is maddening. How can this happen?
Meanwhile, you have a senior citizen about 2 blocks from us who got a blight ticket because she had chopped down a tree, and the tree had not been removed from her front lawn. And so, the disproportionality, selective enforcement, selective rulemaking, and this is just the newest iteration of a problem in that site. Isn't this a site where the Koch brothers were storing coke?
I'm not positive.
I'm not sure.
I thought that was farther down south, but I may be wrong.
Yeah. I thought that I read somewhere about some storage there, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But let's just say that prior to that, we had petroleum coke by Koch brothers being stored on our riverfront, and they thought that was okay. So there is this continuing just disrespect for the people who live near there, because even before this entered the groundwater, you're having dangerous contaminants stored near where people live. In 48217, which is the most polluted zip code, in Detroit. And so it speaks to a lack of, reverence for our water and protecting our water source, because the Detroit River is connected to the Great Lakes, and the Great Lakes is the largest freshwater source
in the world.
And so, it's all bad.
Yeah. So just to let you know, there is now a sinkhole in that site, and it has been there since November. And the city issued a violation notice on December the 6th. So the city did move, and the city is currently charging Revere Copper and Detroit Bulk Storage $3,000 a day in violation costs until they either remove all the material from the site or get a permit that allows them to do that business. So more on that to come.
But the most exciting thing is the city says they're starting annual inspections of industrial sites immediately. Really?
That's great. Donna, that's great news.
That's great news, because we have annual inspections of our fire safety in our sites right now.
Do you? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We have annual, compliance that we have to meet, targets we have to meet. So it's just all interesting how, again, government acts differently.
Well, I think, we saw this come up about 2 years ago. We were writing about the rental ordinance. The city by and far was not requiring landlords to go through that similar process. So now they are cracking down, although still they're having a huge problem getting landlords to be certified and go through these inspections.
Certified and to register their properties. Yeah. There's still a campaign to get units that are rentals registered with the city of Detroit.
Right.
I think just to that point, what is the wraparound service to help landlords? I think that there is a misnomer out there that landlords have money and are rich. Not all of them are, and they need resources and help as well.
Right.
Donna, fresh up. Oh, no, there is no more fresh off the press. We're only doing 2 stories because we had the thing. So that wraps up our fresh off the press segment. If you have 80 stories and news items that you would like us to cover, please hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Authentically Detroit, or you can send us an email at authenticallydetroit.com. So in our discussion this week, we're tackling the foreclosure crisis in the city of Detroit with Christine MacDonald from the Detroit News.
And we are so happy to have you.
We are so happy to have you.
That's great.
Within the last 2 weeks, she has written 2 stories that we want to unpack. The first being that Detroit homeowners were overtaxed $600 million. And the second being a report aptly titled, Pay Owners Who Lost Their Homes to Illegal Foreclosures. Christine, thanks again for being with us.
Thank you. I appreciate the time to talk about this. Yeah, and that number, 600 million at least, because the way we were able to estimate this and do our analysis, we do believe it's a conservative number. So just giving you a heads up that this is probably on the low end.
But it wasn't a number that the city or the county disputed.
No, they didn't. They acknowledged they haven't done the same analysis, so but they did not dispute our method for coming up with this. And I don't know if you want me to touch on that briefly.
Please.
Yeah. So what we did, and a colleague of mine, Mark Betancourt, he's a freelancer. We kind of combined about a year and a half ago, I think, and we wanted to we felt both of us wanted to dig into this more. Unfortunately, because of layoffs and things at both papers, we haven't had a big enough staff to do some of this type of the work. But we sat down and came up, and he actually came up with a method to estimate this by just looking at the city went property by property, was state ordered to go property by property and value all residential properties in 2013. That was after first investigation we did, showing the inequities and the problems with assessments department and how riddled with errors and inflated bills people were getting. So the state came in and said, "Hey, city, you've got to act." And they hadn't done this property by property survey in decades. And you're really supposed to cycle through all properties every 5 years. Mm-hmm. So we know it was decades since they were able to do this. So they completed that in 2017. So what we decided to do is take that 2017 value for everybody's house, for the most part, reapply that and kind of substitute that for every tax bill between 2010 and 16. Then that's how we basically estimated how overtaxed you were, if you were, and the majority of people were overtaxed. We have a calculator on our website, or not a calculator, but a lookup, so you can plug in your address.
What's the website?
DetroitNews.com.
Got it.
You can search probably assessments and maybe Detroit News, and it'll pop up a little easier.
Now, one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to take a geography,
sure,
and see if we could evaluate over assessments within that geography. Is there any way for us to get bulk information?
Yeah, we're. Let me talk to my colleague Mark. This is all public data.
Right.
Everything we based our analysis on was the city data. It took us quite a while to get. Months.
Can you talk about that?
Yes.
Well,
I remember there being a story that broke about the county wanting to charge 200 something million.
Actually, a little less, but it was still quite a bit. $235,000. $235,000.
Sorry, $235,000. Excuse me.
So
guys.
that would have just been. We wanted to know everybody that has debt today. We wanted to take those addresses and compare to the overtax, like how many people people that still owe and are at risk of foreclosure were overtaxed, and by how much. And so that was a piece of data that we needed. And unfortunately, the county treasurer, Eric Sabri, decided to change his policy on release of data through the Freedom of Information Act at the time we requested it, and charged us differently. And the way he charged added that bill up to $235,000. So we ended up through a national group that it's called Reveal with the Center for Investigative Reporting. They had a gentleman, Manuel.
Shout out to them.
Yeah, Emmanuel, who ended up scraping the website, and that is basically writing code and taking all that data off the website. To add, all this was public data in terms of who owes what and what properties. So, but it wasn't, we weren't able to get it in bulk. Yeah, it was just enter in your address. So that scrape helped us get that data, and we didn't have to pay that bill in the end. And then we also have the city, which cooperated and did comply with our FOIA requests, multiple FOIA requests for a lot of data. So I've got to give it to them for doing that. We appreciate it, and that's the law, but they had to. So, yeah, that data's here, and we could talk about that.
I think that I work with other community development organizations. Yeah. And it's so important for us to understand the history of what's been in our community.
Right.
We started out this segment by listening to the other
America.
The other America, right? I was going to say the other Detroit, but he was not focusing on us. But we listened to the other America, and Martin Luther King Jr. was very clear that just because we have new laws and just because certain constitutional changes have been made does not mean that we are making progress in terms of justice. Equal justice requires something different. And as I reflect back on what I know about tax foreclosures, I have to believe that the majority, maybe even the vast majority of people who lost their properties are Black or brown. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know that there's been a study directly on that, but I know the city is 80% African American. We know the homeowner rate is pretty much mirrors the overall homeowner rate. Yeah. So I think it's common sense at this point that would be correct.
And we talked to Bernadette Atuahenny, and one of the things that she said is that the number of overassessed properties is much, much greater in the lowest income neighborhoods than it is in higher income neighborhoods. Yep. In fact, in higher income neighborhoods, the top quartile or quintile, there was only like 13% of the homes were overassessed, and there were many homes that were underassessed in those neighborhoods.
Correct. Yeah, we've seen that anecdotally with the folks that we interviewed, in these stories that there was one woman, Anna Bolden, who bought on the west side, and brick house, bought it for $4,800. That was she bought it at the tax auction. Actually, it was a foreclosure. Her first tax bill was $4,600. So she's paying more than half of in that first year. We ended up doing her data, and it looked like she's been overtaxed by almost over $4,000. Mm-hmm. She owes about a little more than that. So. And she's owned it that whole time. So,
which is pretty horrible.
Can I?
So, but I just want to just make one small little point. I don't know if it's small, but one little point that I was asking you that question about, because I'm thinking that what I've read is that Black homeownership rates in Detroit are back to where they were in 1968.
Yeah, it's
and so
plummeted.
We are still. When you not only are Martin Luther King Jr.'s words prescient, but they're also prophetic, because the reality is that we made gains over these years, and through predatory lending, which the government allowed by not regulating lenders, and nobody went to prison for it, so I'm guessing this is just okay, and predatory taxation, which is the only way I can look at it. We reversed homeownership rates, and the people who were specifically and mostly harmed were African Americans in Detroit.
Detroit was the Black homeownership capital of the United States.
Right.
Basically, yes.
And so now we've walked, and it's not just the home, right? It's generational wealth. Yeah. It is neighborhood stability. And in a lot of the neighborhoods that were really the hardest hit, I'm not going to talk about those that were designated as hardest hit to comply with, this federal program.
Right.
But a lot of the neighborhoods that were hardest hit are not neighborhoods that are being targeted for strategic investments right now. So the idea that there were some predatory practices that you didn't know you were doing, but now you find out, you weren't working really, really hard to try to, you had to be forced by the court to have to fix the tax rates. But it just is either through intention or neglect that we are not making progress economically in our community in Detroit.
Yeah. You want to respond to that question?
Well, I think you could make that argument, that question of intentional or neglect on a lot of things in the city and policies and where we are today. That subprime, really set the stage for this. All that subprime lending, we had such high percentages in Detroit, some of the highest in the nation, and our values went so high. So when things tanked, it went so low. That's where the problem came with the assessor's department, and they just didn't respond quick enough. Didn't have there's a combination. Did they not have the resources? It was a combination, or was there not the will to make these drastic drops in
changes?
Values. Yeah.
I want to ask a question related to that, but I want to read some of the findings to sort of tee up this question.
Okay.
Of the 173,000 Detroit homes reviewed, more than 92% were overassessed between 2010 and 2016 and overtaxed by an average total of $3,800. Nearly 96,000 of those properties were taxed twice as much as they should have been in at least one of those years. Point number 2, of the overassessed homes, city records show about 79,000 properties have had the same owner since 2010, meaning that homeowners bore the full brunt of the overtaxation. More are likely to have felt the impact because buyers often purchase homes with prior years of unpaid taxes they must pay. Last one, at least 59,000 homes that were overtaxed still have back taxes today, a total of $153 million, which includes interest and fees. Those same homes were overtaxed by at least $221 million over the 7 years, according to the analysis. Yeah. So my question is, when presented with these facts, what was the response of county government? What was the response of municipal government?
City government. Yeah, I think we sat down with the mayor, we sat down with his CFO, Dave Masseron, and the theme was that this happened, this acknowledged, first of all, an acknowledgement that mistakes were made, that these values should have gone down farther, quicker, but that happened under another administration, and that they are limited today, legally and financially, on what they can do in terms of making this right with folks. And those are the questions, I think, that are still remain out there. They are putting their weight behind this pay-as-you-stay program. They feel that this program, which would bring dramatic debt relief to a lot of low-income homeowners, it could bring their debt quite a bit down. It wouldn't eliminate it all, and they'd actually have to apply. So it's similar to what people would apply for a poverty tax exemption. If this passes in Lansing, it would go back and retroactively wipe out all their interest and fees, and then cap their debt, the rest of their debt, at 10% of their taxable value. So, I think one of the women that Anna Bolden, hers would be just about $1,100 that she would owe, and she owes about $4,800, I think. So it would cut it dramatically. But that's their stance, that we're gonna concentrate on the people that still owe through this pay-as-you-stay program, and we're gonna help these folks that qualify. And go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and so that was the gist of. I'm trying to find his exact quote because I think it was significant. Dug in when we talked to him that, he said he thinks rates should have gone down sooner, but I dealt with what we had and we moved as quickly as we could. Folks had a process by which they could appeal. Those years are closed. He's referencing that everyone, as part of the process, can appeal their assessments, but very low. Yes,
people
very small
don't
percentage.
Can do that, yeah.
He went on to say, I know any lawful way to go back and to say to tell taxpayers in the city who did follow the process, we're going to raise your taxes to pay the taxes for people who didn't. Yeah. So he's saying that it would take basically more tax to make this right.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So we have a stadium in Detroit, Little Caesars Arena, right?
Yep.
Did it receive tax abatements, to your knowledge?
Yeah, the whole area. Yeah.
The whole area received tax abatements. So now you have these guests going in, and when they have games or concerts there, is there policing that takes place around there?
Yeah, I do believe, I'm not up to date, but I think they have changed that agreement. There was an agreement prior. It was probably what you're remembering, was that the stadium did have free policing, but I believe that had changed.
Well, at some point,
yeah,
they had free policing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Are they paying for fire service?
I believe. I believe so, but I can't tell you for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Because what I'm thinking is that we have these entities that contribute to the drain on the Detroit General Fund. And we excuse their taxes. And that means that and the taxes, most of the taxes they pay go into the Downtown Development Authority, not into the neighborhoods where taxpayers have lived and paid their bills. So is there a similar concern on part of the mayor that it's not fair for taxpayers who've been paying their bills to have to absorb the added cost of the expanded infrastructure and growth in Midtown and Downtown?
No, I think that's a fair question to ask, and I think he there's a general argument that they want to build that downtown, and that will benefit in general, the income tax of those employees, that there are other benefits to having a strong downtown. But I know that answer doesn't satisfy a lot of folks.
I think there's probably other benefits to keeping people in their homes, for that matter.
Correct, yes.
Okay,
well,
so every time go on.
Studies show that those folks, once those homes are foreclosed, they're much more likely to go be stripped and to go into the demolition process.
So now the demolition contractor can make a few 20,000 plus demolishing it, but also the people who have to live next to this. There's also studies that show that their satisfaction and the likelihood of them moving increases when they see that. So you have this continued outflow from neighborhoods. And I would say that the people who live in the neighborhoods in Detroit are probably more likely to claim Detroit as their residence than some of the new people that the city wants to move in, who are still trying to get discounted suburban car insurance. Okay? So the reality is that, in my opinion, it's not a matter of whether the government can do some things. It's a matter of governmental choice. Let's talk about the law for a minute. I remember, was it 2017 when Dan Gilbert with the mayor's support went to Lansing and argued for transformational brownfield tax credits? And in transformational brownfield tax credits, these are not just tax abatements. This is actually a developer able to collect taxes, property taxes and sales taxes, about 50%, which means that they're foregoing these taxes, especially the property taxes which come to the city, are not being, invested fully in the city, even in the Downtown Development Authority. And the sales taxes, which go to support schools and other statewide functions, maybe even roads, are not being deposited in there. So it just seems to me as though we have got to do a better job explaining our priorities and putting all of the choices the government makes on the table. If you don't know that the law allows you to do that, the law didn't allow Dan Gilbert to collect property taxes and sales taxes until they changed the law. And there's, Mike Duggan may be one of the most influential politicians in the city of Detroit. If he went to Lansing and said, hey, I want to do something, I'm pretty sure he'd be able to get that done.
Yeah, he has said that they did make a push for a legislation that would have been more dramatic in terms of taking away debt from folks, those low income. It's called retroactive poverty tax exemption. He is arguing that, that there was no movement on that when it sat for 3 years, and that would have wiped away everything.
Well, the city could on its own make the tax relief retroactive, right?
I believe that their view is that they need to go to Lansing, and that's why they've done that.
Well, so the city does not have the first right of refusal.
Oh, actually, no, you're right.
And the county also has the way to do that.
Thank you.
So the city and the county could come up with a mechanism to excuse all debt. Now, my understanding is that the Wayne County Land Bank does provide.
Well, both of them do. So both of them have the right for refusal, and Land Bank has been doing more. They actually partnered with Quicken and their foundation. And so, but it's just not
rehabbed and ready.
Yeah, they've done about 1,100, I've told, but that's both rental and homeowner. So it's not at the scale that it needs to be for this amount of debt. But that mechanism. You're right, is there. They could, and that is buying homes that are foreclosed, and then selling them back to their owners for a nominal fee.
Ms. Bolden was overtaxed $4,000.
Yes, by our estimates.
By your estimates.
Yes.
And with the, what is it, stay and pay?
Pay as you
stay.
Yeah.
With the pay as you stay, the amount that she's being forced to pay that she does not actually should not owe, based on the Michigan Constitution, is $1,100.
Yeah, it could go down quite a bit. I think it could go down. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but yeah.
What number is just?
Right. That's the question.
That's the question.
Because what is the price of justice? And I just want to go back to Martin Luther King Jr., though, because what he talks about in this speech is the willingness of government to achieve justice, the willingness of government to fight, and the willingness of people in our community to fight for justice. If you charge me $1 too much, I'm going to fight for my dollar. I'm crazy like that.
So we had a conversation with Bernadette, and you used the language in the latest report that was released on January 15 around how these foreclosures that took place were actually unconstitutional. They were illegal. And the report says, pay owners who lost their homes to illegal Detroit foreclosures. And I know that City Council President Pro Tem Mary Sheffield in her office released a report, and you did some writing around it. What do you get? What's going on? What are they thinking?
Right. So they this was kind of a coincidence, but they were working on this report at the same time. Not necessarily a coincidence, but that it came out around the same time we were doing our piece. They had been working on this issue since May. Council Pro Tem Sheffield told me that on possible ways to pay back basically people who have lost their homes. And that were overassessed. And so they came up with a variety of of potential. A lot of them were ideas that would existing city programs and targeting them to folks who had lost their homes. But they do include a portion where an option that people should be paid, monetary reimbursement for this loss. And so that's what this report, it's pretty fascinating. If you go online, I think we provide a link to it. But yeah, it's everything from potentially paying folks directly to, connecting them with free homes through the land bank to
setting up a small business in the
training, employment training, stuff that's already existing in the city, but finding these people who were wronged in their mind, by these tax foreclosures and connecting them with these resources.
But it's not just in their mind. It's by virtue of the Michigan Constitution.
Yes, right.
It is constitutionally harmed. Yep. And it seems as though if there's a constitutional harm, there's a duty to remedy that situation.
Sure.
So if what the mayor is worried about is some people paid taxes they didn't know, so now we're going to have to charge the rest, which is kind of silly to me because we talked about this before. It's like if somebody I love dies for cancer, don't find a cure because it's not fair that you can save somebody else's life. And that's just not how justice works. I would hope and believe that somebody who was unfairly treated would celebrate justice being applied in the future.
Yeah, I think that most striking number we found, was when you look at there's 63,000 people or properties that have tax debt, and of those, I think about 40,000 were overtaxed. A larger proportion, but 40,000 people, what they owe today is less than what was they were overtaxed by. So if you think about that, that's pretty striking. That those folks, if something was there that could correct this problem in terms of our estimate, that debt they are owed on those 40,000 homes is less than they were overtaxed during those years.
I think what this argues to me for participatory budgeting, where people in the city of Detroit understand all of the sources and uses of city government. There's a budget survey out right now. Please and have input into prioritization of expenses. Do we want bike lanes, or do we want to pay these people back? Do we want to assemble land and give it to a international billion-dollar manufacturer, or do we want to pay these people back? I don't know. I think something like $220 million was sent assembling land to give to Fiat Chrysler. And that number could increase because in the deal they struck with the bridge owner, the bridge company, if the city does not meet certain conditions, they are going to owe, I can't remember the number, at least $100,000 more. If the city can, on a dime, decide we're going to do this because it's good for the city, then you have to wonder, what is the role of government as perceived by those in charge?
That's fair. Yeah, we talked to, that was kind of a point that the State Tax Commission former chair, so this guy, Doug Roberts, who was a state treasurer, he was on the board when all this kind of went off the rails in terms of the city's assessment department. And I asked him back in 2013, do you wish you would have acted sooner to correct this problem? And he said yes, and that our data was hard to hear, and that saying that he believed that folks that this should be corrected and that this is what government's about.
So on that note, I'm glad you mentioned that. He said it was sort of hard to hear.
Yeah.
This was released. The 600 million overtaxation story was released a couple of weeks ago. How have you been? You've been busy.
Yeah, right. Well, we wanted to not only give Detroiters that big number, but a lot of times that's all we give as reporters, and we don't give that drilled down data. And so that's why it was important to us to put that address lookup where now not every property is on there. There's an asterisk.
Are you partnering with Outlier to do that?
Yeah. No, we're working on some other things with them, but they gave us some advice too, which was really helpful. But the 173,000 properties are in this lookup, and you can go in and see a plethora of information on these properties. You can see what your taxable value, what that value that they based your tax bill on, what you actually were billed over this span, 2010 through 17. So we wanted to give people all this along with our estimate on what you were overtaxed. So there's a lot of information on there that's not available anywhere else. We had to this was our FOIAs. These were our FOIAs that gathered all these years, 2010 through basically 17,
yeah, 17
to put this
19.
out. So yeah, my point is that we wanted to make sure that Detroiters could access their own information and give them an estimate of where they were and where the city took them after the reappraisal, and trying to be transparent that this is an estimate, and our best estimate. This is one way to do this, and it gives folks an idea of how their values, how the city treated that value and where it went. So
one of the things that you guys did masterfully, and I commend you as a fellow journalist, is you put humans to this crisis.
Yeah.
Talk about some of the folks that you've highlighted. How are they doing?
Yeah.
What's going on? Are they still in trouble? Did they get help? What's going on?
There was one woman in particular that people really responded to, and Candace Patterson, and we featured her in actually a story on payment plans a couple weeks prior to this 600 million story. But this was a problem for her as well. She was overtaxed by probably a little over $4,000. And she owes $6,500. She's a single mom. She works at one of the downtown hotels as a housekeeper. This was a house she got from her family, kind of handed that down to her. She wants to keep it handed down to her kids. We went door to door trying to find folks, and I knocked on her door, and I'm so lucky that I did because she was so open to us and to talk about how stressful getting these foreclosure notices every year.
Yeah, I remember that.
And, getting on these payment plans, but it just not when you don't know how the system works, and it can be very intimidating. And she talked about that and how worried she was, and so what's pretty amazing is that recently NPR did a small piece, only 5 minutes, on this issue on All Things Considered, and I got probably like 15 responses from people across the country, which is 15 doesn't seem like a lot, but it actually is a huge amount for us, and they were all around the country. A couple people want to pay her entire bill.
Oh my gosh!
So
It's amazing.
So we're setting something up. They want to do it anonymously. So Ted Phillips at United Housing
UCAC.
Coalition, they're setting up something for her now. So hopefully, she's not going to have to worry about this. But what's sad is it's great to see her get help and people respond to her so much. They played some of her tape. We have a video of her online, and people really connected with her story. But there's so many other stories out there similarly.
Yeah. I really connected with Breck Steverson. In your feature, he's like so many Detroiters that we serve at Eastside Community Network. He is on disability, and he's having these issues with taxes, and we see it every day. Any update on him? How's he doing?
My colleague Mark Betancourt interviewed him, and I think he is hoping. Well, I don't know. His situation is more uncertain because it's not clear that he's going to qualify for pay-as-you-stay. His income, is going to be too high. So he is still worried about this debt, and I think he was overtaxed. I think $5,000 plus, and his debt is lower than that. So, his story is yet to be told in terms of how this is. He's caring for several teenage kids. In a baby grandson, so there's a lot at stake in all these situations. So much.
When we get to the point where justice is unaffordable, then we can't really talk about our growth as a city. Detroit isn't coming back if Detroit can't even make sure that Detroit corrects its own wrongs, and so. This is really, really tragic to me. I do want to point out one thing that we discussed before we started taping, and that is this thought that I've been hearing, and I actually agree with, that one of the core issues is not necessarily bad city government, that we have to look at an overall restructuring of taxation from the federal and state governments down, where there's this perception that good government cuts taxes for businesses and cuts taxes for wealthy people and cuts estate taxes, and the impact of all of this, and even Proposal A, which allows properties to be capped, taxes to be capped, but if the property loses value, then you can't ever catch it back up. And so there's some real issues with our systems of taxation that mean that our municipalities are starved. And what some people have talked about is this idea that governments become clients of, city governments become clients to business and to wealthy people, that there's this perception, I need to get businesses in here and wealthy people because this is the only way I'm going to refill my coffers. And in that sense, it's a structural issue and not an individual choice of a single mayor or a treasurer. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely think that's a debate. For years, there's been tax reform proposals to rethink how we tax folks and the inequities that are there. You've got people on a same block paying, 3 times less than their neighbor just because their neighbor moved in a couple of years ago, and that cap you referenced. So there's inequities in taxation right now, but yeah, I don't know that there's the desire, the movement right now to see a change. We'll see.
Movements start with people.
Yeah.
Either the movement is going to start with corporate people and the rich people deciding they want to pay more of their fair share, or voters are going to come together and demand it, right? Mm-hmm. And when you look at also the combined effect of that, and then these downtown development authorities, which are no longer functioning in the way they used to. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Downtown Development Authority in Detroit was designed to stimulate reinvestment. I think it's fair to say it's been stimulated. Right now, we need to utilize some of those property taxes differently. And I know there are also proposals to rewrite the Downtown Development Authority legislation, which captures all of those resources for the downtown.
Yeah.
And so it's just one of those things where I think as community members, we should start the investigations and be part of those conversations about Proposal A.
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas of how we can be involved and whether or not the people who've researched these issues can assist us in building at least knowledge and awareness of the systems?
Well, I can tell you we are always open as a newspaper to hearing ideas on what we should be covering. There's fewer of us on staff, unfortunately, at both the Free Press and the News, but these are all topics that we want to know what folks want us digging into, and we are always accepting of letters to the editors and op-ed pieces. But yeah, these are the things that we need to be writing about and hear your feedback. So yeah, I wouldn't be afraid to call a reporter. You see names in that paper for a reason under a byline or under a story. We do want to know what your ideas are and what we should be focusing on. And I would tell your listeners to not, hopefully, I know the papers have reputations, but give it a try.
Give it a try.
What's the worst that could happen?
What's the worst that can happen?
By calling up a reporter and say, "Hey, I think you should take a look at this."
Yeah.
So.
Christine, we want to thank you so much for joining us. We are all out of time, but we appreciate your rich research and your willingness to be able to come in and digest this with us. So thank you so much.
On and off day at that.
Yeah.
On and off day. Right. On MLK Day.
Yeah.
So if you have topics that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Authentically Detroit, or email us at authenticallydetroit.com. Time for shout-outs. Donna, shout-outs.
Angela Davis. I want to shout out Angela Davis,
did you go?
who is at U of M. Yeah, I went online and watched it. I was not in the mood to stand in the crowd, but it is online, and I think we should probably post what she talked about also on our Authentically Detroit page.
Yeah.
She just, what I love about her is that she's passionate, she's a fighter for justice, but she fights in the same way and with the spirit of Martin Luther King. She fights with love. Mm-hmm. And so you don't ever hear her putting people down or calling people out. And at the same time, she makes these amazing points about justice in America.
Does. And she still turns out a magnificent crowd.
Right.
Man, I saw the lines. I would like to shout out all of our comrades in this work. I think also often our jobs are thankless, and it's rare when we get an opportunity to really acknowledge each other. So I want to shout out all of the newsrooms that are working hard on behalf of Detroiters, working to make sure that the newsroom is diversified and reflects the makeup of the city of Detroit. I want to shout out folks who are partners with the HB TAP stuff, who are getting people signed up for poverty tax exemptions, who shouldn't even have to apply anyway, but they're doing that hard and laborious work. Shout out to our co-workers who are on the front lines of that work at Eastside Community Network. I just want to send a big thank you. We know that it's thankless, we know that it's tiresome, and we know that the hours are long. And I want to make sure that you feel acknowledged and recognized this MLK Day. So thank you to everybody who are co-laborers in this very hard and sometimes traumatic work.
Can I also just extend a shout out to Christy MacDonald?
Absolutely.
Now that you're here,
this
is more than just a good news story.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact quote about a free press and democracy, but you know that you can't have a democracy that really functions well without a free press.
Yeah.
And that press can be free and just not do its job, or that press can decide, even with a shrunken newsroom, that we're going to put out important stories. I feel as though I've been reading more important stories in the free press and the news with your small newsrooms than I have for so long.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Well, I will pass that on to my newsroom colleagues, because that means a lot to us, and it's been a tough couple of years. Many, with these downsizing, but it's great to hear that feedback from folks, because that's all we want.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, Candace Fortman and Outlier Media.
Oh, yeah.
That was
guys,
a great event last Wednesday. It was very interesting.
And Sarah Alvarez.
Sarah Alvarez. Oh my gosh.
She's just really inspiration to me.
To everybody,
have her talk, because she is always your cheerleader, and will just fight for for you to believe in something, and she's been that for me. So I'd like to shout out to Sarah Alvarez.
All right, look at Christine with a shout out, and we want to shout out our event coming up this Wednesday at Urban Consulate, a candid conversation on being Black all over the world. Yodeep Mesfin Johnson and myself will be unpacking our German Marshall Fellowship experience at COACT at 6:00 this Wednesday. Moderated by none other than Kirk Mays, the CEO of Forgotten Harvest, and Marlo Stoudemire of Roster Detroit, who is a habitual guest here at Authentically Detroit. So check us out. Yeah.
Great.
We're
Thank
good.
You.
All right. Thank you for listening. Catch the wave.